Okay, so Davos. Well, Davos has now been the hand of the King Stannis for how long now? Nearly a month and a half. That's according to that spreadsheet you can find online titled "Most Precise ASOIAF Timeline in Existence," to whose authors goes my gratitude. I know it's probably a collective effort, but the main project manager here is a person who goes under by the nickname Private Major. So, Private Major, if you're listening right now, thank you. I've also seen other contributors listed, among whom a certain Feldman 10, which I imagine is this that same Feldman who wrote those beautiful articles on the Myronese blot. Anyway, and now, of course, this chapter here, Davos V in A Storm of Swords, is where Stannis goes, they did what? as a reaction to the news of the Red Wedding. Welcome, dear listener, to the incoherent ramblings of an insane person online, me. We're reading A Song of Ice and Fire together. Glad you could join. And right now we're about to sink our teeth into chapter 54 of A Storm of Swords. That's right, we are back on Dragonstone, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. So yeah, Stannis has just received news of the Red Wedding by none other than Salladhor Saan. And a couple of elements worth noting. This is the first instance in the series that the massacre orchestrated by the Frey Corporation, in cahoots with Lannisters and Boltons, the first instance we hear the phrase Red Wedding. Or perhaps I should say collocation, a nerdy sociolinguist, like yours truly would say. Hang on a second, let me just mute this phone. Right. Anyway, so yeah, that's how Salladhor explains it to Stannis. You know, the mainstream media have already come up with a catchy name for it, the Red Wedding. Let me read you the quote. In the city, the lions prance and dance. The Red Wedding, the small folk are calling it. They swear Lord Frey had the boy's head hacked off, sewed the head of his dire wolf in its place, and nailed a crown about his ears. His lady mother was slain as well, and thrown naked in the river. Yeah. And finally, with this piece of news, I get to talk about some of those other foreshadowy bits which I couldn't explore when I did my commentary on the Red Wedding itself, chapter 51, Kathleen 7, because of my anti-spoiler policy. But now I can. I'm talking about those hints and references to the Red Wedding that can be found throughout the book series, you know, on a second or third read, foreshadowy bits that refer not so much to the Red Wedding itself, but rather to events linked to the aftermath of the Red Wedding. For example, the desecration of Robb Stark's body, just described by Salladhor Saan. See, remember when I went through the list of weird visions Daenerys experienced in the House of the Undying way back in A Clash of Kings, Daenerys 4? Here, one of the visions is described thusly, and here we go, thank God for bookmarks. She came upon a feast of corpses, savagely slaughtered. The feasters lay strewn across overturned chairs and hacked trestle tables asprawl in pools of congealing blood. Dun dun dun. Some had lost limbs, even heads. Severed hands clutched bloody cups. Wooden spoons, roast fowl. Yeah, because they used them as weapons to defend themselves, we now know. Heels of bread. I don't know how effective a heel of bread can be as a weapon. In a throne above them sat a dead man with the head of a wolf. He wore an iron crown and held a leg of lamb in one hand, as a king might held a scepter, and his eyes followed Danny with mute appeal. Yeah. Well, I did read that quote out to you, dear listener, actually. I don't know if you are the same listener who listened to me back when I did my commentary on the Red Wedding, chapter 51. Anyway, I did read out that quote at the time, but I was trying to be coy, with that description of a man with a head of a wolf, because prophecies, what are you going to do, right? Prophecies are notoriously symbolic, allegorical and whatnot. The man is probably meant to symbolize Robb Stark, but that vision doesn't necessarily mean that the man has the head of an actual wolf, right? That's what I said at the time. Well, no. Turns out Danny's dreams were actually quite literal in this case. Then there's the story of Catelyn's body thrown out in the river. Was this foreshadowed anywhere at all? As a matter of fact, it was. Again, in A Clash of Kings, in that chapter where Catelyn finds herself at Bitterbridge, negotiating with Renly Baratheon, Catelyn too. And at some point, she spots her own reflection in a plate of armor. Here, let me read you this other quote. Beside the entrance, the king's armor stood sentry, a suit of forest green plate, its fittings chased with gold, the helm crowned by a great rack of golden antlers, of course. The steel was polished to such a high sheen that she could see her reflection in the breastplate, gazing back at her as if from the bottom of a deep green pond. The face of a drowned woman, Catelyn thought. Can you drown in grief? Ah! So yeah, the face of a drowned woman, underwater, yes. I would very much call that a piece of foreshadowing. No doubt. There are others, but I can't discuss them yet. For some of them, we actually have to wait until the epilogue of this same book. But yeah, there are other references to what happened to Catelyn's body. But let's get into the action of this chapter right here. Because Stannis still can't believe his ears. He's thinking these Freys are cursed, what with the laws of hospitality and all. And he may well have a point, except that, this curse might materialize in a strange and unexpected ways, as they always do in this series. Curses and blessings. Everything is like a monkey paw, isn't it? There's always a counterbalance in the force. Well, Stannis' wife, Selisa? I want to pronounce that final E. I bet it's meant to be sounded. Selisa and her uncle Axel Florent, they waste no time crediting their god R'hllor for clearing the board of yet another rival king. Yeah, it was the hand of R'hllor did the deed. R'hllor this and R'hllor that. And Stannis has had just about enough because, you guys, you should stop putting R'hllor everywhere, on salads and desserts even. R'hllor's hand. Give me a break. Last I checked, R'hllor's hand wasn't covered in liver spots. Sounds to me like it was the hand of old Walder Frey, you guys. Keep it in church. Keep that stuff in church, will you? I mean, yeah, actually, what he actually says is more like, you're not at night fire right now. Those night fires where you say your prayers to the God of Light. Okay, it's not a church. They do it by dumpster fires. I should probably say at this point that these dialogues are slightly paraphrased. Yeah, okay, all right. And about those fires, this is Melisandre. Another thing I have seen in the flames is a whole bunch of other kings rising to replace these old ones that they have left us, which kind of stops Stannis in his track because he was about to order to send envoys to White Harbor and the Iron Islands, offering pardons to anyone who will repent for not supporting Stannis from the start, because now they're both Ironborn and the good Northerners, as opposed to the bad Northerners. Those good Northerners have to contend with the Lannister-Tyrell army on the one hand, and the bad Northerners on the other, namely the Boltons, Mandalays and Greyjoys, were probably more likely to listen to Stanislav That's right. That's what I'm going to call him now, Stanislav. So yeah, in theory, Stannis' idea to send letters to these guys, in theory, did sound like good advice. Anyway, no. No. Melisandre says no. No. And Melly, let's not forget, she has acquired more credibility now, seeing that the leech magic has been shown to work. I mean, in the chapter where leeches were cast into the flames, each of these 3 leeches symbolizing one of the kings who was supposed to be taken off the board. This was back in Davos 4. Yeah, in that chapter, even Melisandre was all caveats, She was going. She was all like, well, it's not an exact science, I make no promises, etc., etc. But now the 2 of these 3 kings are confirmed kills, and 2 out of 3 ain't bad, in Meatloaf's words. Now that the leech trick could be shown to actually work, you bet your bottom dollar that Melly hasn't wasted a minute taking credit for it, or rather giving Roholdor credit for it. But anyway, Stannis is skeptical of prophecies seen in the flames, even though he has seen a few things in the flames himself. But the fact with those things is you have to interpret them, and credit where credit is due. Melisandre does admit that sometimes she might have misinterpreted some of those visions. But her argument goes, that doesn't make those prophecies any less real, any less true, She goes, what you need to do, Stan the man, is give the 7 kingdoms a demonstration of your power. Yeah? But Stannis remains skeptical. Demonstration of my power? What, with 1,300 men here on Dragonstone, another 300 men on Storm's End, and not a pot to piss in? Ah, well, but Aegon the Conqueror did conquer the entire continent with even fewer units. Of course, there's the small matter of those dragons, which he had, and you don't. But yeah, let's talk. Let's not talk about dragons, shall we? Because here Stannis basically echoes those bits of history recited by Alistair Florent. You remember, back in Davos 3. Madness, I tell you, sheer madness. This was an actual quote. There you go. Remember? Did we learn nothing from Aerion Brightfire, from the 9 mages, from the alchemists? Did we learn nothing from Summerhall, indeed? No good has ever come from these dreams of dragons. See, that's basically the fragmentary history we had of all people who had their own schemes on how to bring back dragons after their extinction, And we're already familiar with the story of this Aerion Brightfire because Lord Commander Mormont discussed it with Jon Snow in Jon 1 from A Clash of Kings, when he says this. He said that this Aerion Targaryen, stage name Aerion Brightfire. Here, let me read you this quote. I'm all quotes today. He said, one night, Aerion, in his cups, he drank a jar of wildfire, as you do, after telling his friends it would transform him into a dragon. But the gods were kind, and it transformed him into a corpse. There. Aerion the monstrous. Yet another nickname he went by. But here Stannis goes into more detail about all the other characters as well. 9 mages crossed the sea to hatch Aegon III's cache of eggs, dragon eggs, yeah. Baelor the Blessed prayed over his for half a year. Wow, imagine, this is a full-time job. Aegon IV built dragons of wood and iron. Aerion Brightflame drank wildfire to transform himself. And here's what happened. The mages failed, King Baelor's prayers went unanswered, the wooden dragons burned, and Prince Aerion died screaming. So there. A brief history of dragon delusions by Stannis Baratheon. And Selice's all like, yeah, well, but you were heralded by a red comet. Remember that? Oh, again with a bloody comet. Tell you what, pretty much everyone and their dogs back in A Clash of Kings thought that the red comet was all about them. You know, even Theon, you'll remember, reckoned that the comet signified that the age of Theon had begun. And look where that got him. Which we we do know now. We do know he's in Dreadfort, being skinned bit by bit. We had it from several parties. Meanwhile, we know what Melisandre is after, because that's what she's been begging for the whole time. She's after the boy. She wants to grill poor young Edric Storm, Robert Baratheon's baseborn son. So she's all like, give me the boy, come on, give me the boy. And Queen Selice's argument for getting rid of Edric Storm is that the boy, whom no one acknowledges by his given name, because why would you name a turkey right before Christmas, huh? Anyway, so Selice reminds Stannis that the boy is indeed the fruit of a sinful carnal knowledge between Robert and Selice's cousin Delena Florent, who did the wild thing in, of all places, the very bed which was earmarked for Stannis' and Selice's wedding night. So imagine their faces when they enter their bed chamber right after their bedding ceremony. Which I don't imagine a drunken Robert Baratheon making up the bed, like making it look like nothing happened. Okay, now this should, let's line up the linen, the bed sheets just like that. Okay. Now let's leave the room in tiptoes. And no, I don't think so. Maybe they is it explained? Did they find the couple asleep in the bed? Oi, what do you think you're doing? Anyway, the superstition being that is the reason the couple is cursed, in that they, are you ready for that? They still can't have male hairs. Which is a big deal in this, highborn, within inheritance laws and all that. In this universe, it's a big deal. Okay, all right. I didn't make those rules yet. So they can't have male hairs as long as the Edric is still alive. So yeah, once we once we get rid of poor Edric, who is completely blameless, you'll have a whole platoon of male hairs. You'll be spoiled for choice. You will have more male hairs that you'll know what to do with them. So Melisandre, Selice, and Axel, they're all going in unison, or rather, no, with a chord. They're going, the boy, the boy, the boy, kind of like a choir, the boy, the boy, the boy. And they would really love for Davos to join in and provide the minor seventh, the boy. But no. Davos is actually the only one who's not saying anything. He's just listening to this choir, to the riff, it does feel like a song. This whole scene could be transposed to a musical. Give us the boy. It's lovely. And here we have more talk of dragons, but stone dragons, which confirms my suspicion that the sort of magic Melisandre has in mind involves bringing to life the actual stone gargoyle dragon type things, sculptures of dragons, actually. Like, wow, that must be like in Ghostbusters, I'm talking about the 1984 original where the demon dog gargoyle type thing gets possessed and come to life, and then somehow they incorporate, or they merge with Rick Moranis's and Sigourney Weaver's bodies. It's very confusing. But no, because listen to this. This is what confirms my suspicion. Allow me to read you yet one more quote. Your dragon shall awaken and spread his stony wings. The kingdom shall be yours. This is, I believe, it's the Alistair No, sorry, no, not Alex. What am I talking about? Selisa. And Axel Florent echoes, "Wake the stone dragon and let the traitors tremble." Axel really likes his alliterations, as we shall see later. He'll come up with a few more. But yeah, wake the stone dragon. Also, let's not forget that it's not just gargoyles out there on the turrets. Is that what the rooftops? Let's call them that. But there are other architectural elements inside the castle shaped like dragons. Here, one more quote. It's all quotes today. "The great hall was a dragon lying on its belly, shaped like, sculpted like a. All right, put together with bricks. Men entered through its open mouth. The kitchens were a dragon, curled up in a ball, with the smoke and steam of the ovens vented through its nostrils." That is so tacky. The towers were dragons hunched above the walls or poised for flight. This is how the castle is shaped. The windworm seemed to scream defiance, while Sea Dragon Tower gazed serenely out across the waves. Smaller dragons framed the gates. Dragon claws emerged from walls to grasp at torches. Great stone wings enfolded the smith and armory, and tails formed arches, bridges, and exterior stairs. Basically, the entire castle, and if that's what they have in mind, bringing those stone dragons to life, I mean, I hope those architectural elements are just decorative and not, barren walls or something, because crash. You don't want that. Oh, also, I just have to give you this other quote from Axel. I told you, I promised you alliterations. Here it comes. "Let the false and the fickle feel your flames." This is was that character from Life of Brian. "Pontius, let me read the list of seditious traitors and let the false and the fickle feel your flames." I bet he must have spat like a llama when he said that. And Selisa is on both knees right now, clutching Stannis' legs, and she's all like, "Give her the boy, wake the stone dragon." Oh, and did I tell you we're having the Joneses over for dinner? So yeah, she's just clutching his legs, and Stannis is trying to walk away from her, which must be tricky with Selisa still, who keeps clutching his legs, following him, like, while dragging her knees across the floor. And also, he reckons, Stannis does, he reckons that it's not the boy's fault and that he's innocent. Plus, I mean, he's also Stannis' nephew, but Melisandre points out that, precisely, the more innocent the boy, the more valuable the sacrifice. She's got an answer for everything, doesn't she? So she doesn't believe in curses upon kin slayers. Does that also mean that R'hllor sort of condones murdering guests under your roof, and that she didn't really raise an eyebrow when she heard about the red wedding? The red lady might have actually approved of that tactic and thought to herself, "Damn, if only we had that chance to do something like that with our rival kings." I don't know. This is my theory. I don't know. It's a different religion. I'm kind of unfamiliar with all the clauses and the texts and the scrolls and whatnot. But the trouble is, Stannis almost seems convinced at this point. He starts reminiscing about the first time he saw dragon heads back when he went to King's Landing on a school trip or something. He must have been 4, which would make Robert 6 at the time. No, it was actually their dad, Stefan Baratheon, who took the Baratheon kids to court to visit, King Aerys on royal errands and whatnot. And you know what? It's not often that we see Stannis go off on a tangent, reminiscing, because he's always practical. We do this, we go, all right, are we clear? Okay, good, let's go. But this time he's just got, with dreamy eyes, And here he describes his entire tour and how he saw the dragon's heads and he met the king, and it was only much later that the dragon's skulls. I mean, but it was only much later that he was told, no, that wasn't actually the king. That, dear Stannis, was in fact Tywin Lannister, the king's hand. Which totally made sense to Stannis, because from what he remembers, Tywin looked every bit the king. And just in the previous chapter, which I don't know if you remember, but it parallels Bran's first sort of assessment of Jaime. He said, "Oh, now there's a guy who looked kingly." So interesting. Apparently, they have this look about them, the Lannisters. So Tywin looked every bit the king to Stannis, to little Stannis, toddler Stannis at the time. And just in the previous chapter, in fact, you'll remember Sir Ill in Pain. Okay, I'll stop going on about that. Sir Ill in Pain is mentioned, who had his tongue chopped off by King Aerys. You know, when Tywin scolds Joffrey, telling him, "You know who you remind me of? Aerys, that's right." Always telling everyone who'd care to listen that he was the king. I'm the king, and then chopping the tongues off of anyone who annoyed him. Just ask Sir Ill in Pain for confirmation. Except you won't get a great answer, because the dude has no tongue. Anyway, so the point being that Sir Ill in Pain had his tongue removed for saying precisely that the Tywin was the actual ruler of the Seven Kingdoms and not Aerys. In fact, Aerys wasn't in the throne room the day the Baratheons came to visit, because he had cut his hand on for the umpteenth time on the barbs and blades of the Iron Throne, which we know from Fire and Blood is a sign that the throne is kind of like rejecting an unworthy monarch. I seem to remember Rhaenyra cut herself spectacularly on that throne at some point, Rhaenyra Targaryen. Or then again, it must be just that, you know, you need to know the technique. You need to have a right technique to sit on it. Or maybe it helps if you're, rather light and tiny, like, say, for example, a 13-year-old boy, because we don't hear about Joffrey getting, injured on the Iron Throne. So I don't know. I really don't know. The jury is out on that. Anyway, a couple of things. Meeting between Tywin and Stannis, way back. First and last, so far as I know. Can you imagine those two in the same room together? Initiating like a staring contest, as in first who laughs, loses. 6 hours later, everyone in the room going, it's getting kind of late. Okay, secondly, now seriously, more seriously now, if I may, since Stannis is still on a roll, reminiscing, this is where Davos finally says something. Your Grace, might I speak? And and I think there are a couple of interpretations to the narrative role of this interjection by Davos, because the first one is downright comedic. The trope: a character goes off on a tangent. Oh, those were the days. In fact, I remember an amusing incident, and it's at this point usually that a character goes, hello, time out. We might not have that kind of time, Frank. It's like a quote right out of the Naked Gun or something. But the second one is a bit more serious, because in his monologue, Stannis is about to say something like, "Yeah, still I must admit that to see a dragon fly again, not a dragonfly. To see a dragon fly would not be amazing, but to see a dragon fly again across these skies, yeah, that would be awesome." And that was his thinking, yeah, well, too bad that the price to pay is to burn Edric Storm alive. Oh, no, not on my watch. I'm the hand of the king around here. So Stannis approves the motion, and in fact he goes, yeah, you're the handmaid, you're supposed to speak. Yes, you might speak. Go ahead. Say what you will. So he goes, all right, well, I might not know much about gods and dragons, you know. We don't discuss these things at the World Economic Forum. Get it? Because Davos. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, so I might know more about onions myself. Oh, and dried salt fish. Ha! Yeah, people tend to forget that. It was the fish that I provided that provided the necessary proteins, which you guys needed here needed at Storm's End when you were under siege, and I supplied it. Anyway, where was I? God. Yeah, okay. Yeah, gods and dragons. Gods and dragons. Yeah, okay. Yeah, not my field of expertise, I'll admit. But what I do know is that anyone who kills a relative will be forever cursed by the gods, you know? And Edric, that's right, his name is Edric. Yeah, he's your nephew. So these are the two premises of the syllogism. The conclusion being that you will be cursed by the gods. There, it's a sound syllogism, philosophy 1-to-1, you know? Sound premises, valid, I forgot the definitions actually. Of course, before his little speech, Davos had to, you know, think of a quick prayer to infuse him courage. You know, warrior, make me brave. I'm about to say things that a lot of people in this room will not like, especially Selise and her entourage. Or should I say Melisandre and her entourage? Because really they all seem to be following her. And on the subject of gods, Melisandre at this point can't help launching into her usual refrain. There is but one god, plus, you know, kingslayers, good and evil. These are just bourgeois social constructs, you know what I mean? These are just bourgeois social constructs, and you little bourgeois always fear what you don't understand. See? This is how, this is how a person who went to college puts a blue collar, albeit well-intentioned, guy who can barely read and write back in his place, yeah? Okay, I'm not saying I approve of this kind of attitude, but it does happen a lot. And yeah, right, whatever. You think Stannis has been around the block. No, we don't know whether he's lived more years than Melisandre. We don't really know, but at the moment it appears that, you know, he's been around for longer. So you think he doesn't have an answer to that? Yeah, of course he does. He says, yeah, right, whatever. Then why do you want to barbecue Edric Storm? That's his name, by the way, Edric Storm, not the boy, yeah? And Melly's arguments are always based on the actual, you know, on the usual blood of a king, yada yada, death pays for life, life pays for death, you know, the drill, and blood of the king works, look at the result, you know, leech magic, remember, that worked. And here the Onion Knight just goes, well, let me see, sorry. Let me go back here, okay. Yeah, well, I might be a little bourgeois who doesn't read or write like a pro, but arithmetic has never been one of my problematic areas, if you know what I mean. And for what I can see, you guys threw 3 leeches in the flames and only 2 kings have been eliminated thus far. That's right. I mean, you're rubbing your hands as if all the work was done, Melly, but Joffrey's still safe and sound, prancing around like the psychopath that he is, as Salador has just informed us. To which Stannis goes, ah ha ha, he got you there, huh? You are so owned, Melisandre. Again, paraphrased dialogue. In fact, I realize that I'm butchering it right now, but to be honest, no, you know what? It's time to stop and consider how excellent, how beautifully written this dialogue is. I mean, I don't think I praise George R. R. Martin's actual style often enough, caught up as I am, you know, in plots, subplots, world building, setups and payoffs, you know, timelines, threefold revelations, trope deconstructions, foreshadowing, what else? Theories. But holy shit, This is great dialogue, I tell you, dear listener. It practically reads itself. It just rolls off because it feels like natural dialogue, not following a predetermined thread, but twisting this and that way depending on what each character says next. Is that what you had in mind, Georgie boy? Is that right, Georgie boy? Happy polylodges. Award yourself 5 points if you got that reference. Any old way. So anyway, Melly has a predictable but kind of solid argument. She goes, all right, so does that mean that you'll all be persuaded of Raholor's power if Joffrey stops breathing, I don't know, within the next semester? Yeah, well, it might. And immediately the Florence start, again with her chorus. It really feels like a musical here. He will die, yes, he will die. Perhaps he's dead already. Okay, I should probably stop doing that. and Stannis, as well as you, dear listener, probably has added with that. So will you guys stop that? You know what you sound like? You remind me of Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Always synchronized like that, finishing each other's sentences. No, okay, he doesn't actually say that, but he does send everyone out the door. So everyone, except for Davos, everyone leaves the room. Axel Florent lingers just long enough to make a face at Davos. Look, seriously, the kindergarten stuff, nursery school. Just wait until I catch you alone in the yard when no one is watching. It kind of like I'm telling you, read the chapter. It says it. I mean, not exactly in those words, but that's how I picture it. So one by one, all characters leave the room until the two main characters are left. Face to face, the POV character and the one key player we readers need to keep our eyes on. And incidentally, the very purpose for our POV character to be there in the first place, so we can have eyes on that key player. So he can give us a point of view on this major key player. Why am I bringing that structure up? Well, I'm bringing it up because, have you noticed? It is the very same sort of pivot, mid-chapter sort of hinge in the middle of the previous chapter, Tyrion 6, where all other secondary characters, Cersei, Joffrey, Kevin Lannister, Maester Pycelle, they all leaving the POV character, Tyrion, and the key player, Tywin, alone in the room. And right now, the very same thing is happening again with Selyse and Melisandre. Axel and Salador exiting, and now what we have is our POV character, Davos, and the key player, Stannis, alone in the room at last. It can't be a coincidence that these two chapters, being back to back. Anyway, Stannis here in this case doesn't remember asking Davos to stay because he's all like, "Oh, you still there?" I do remember saying everybody leave the room. the painted table room, the drum. Is that what it's called? The room in the top floor of the drum tower, I think. Yeah, but Davos is persistent here because when the Red Lady's involved, other people's children will burn. So he speaks for personal experience, tragically, seeing as Davos himself has lost 4 sons to wildfire. Never mind that Melisandre wasn't actually involved in the wildfire plot. That was actually Tyrion's doing. But Davos concentrates all the blame on the Red Lady, and in this case, Eric Storm is indeed in danger, so Davos immediately steers the conversation on Edric. So he breaks the ice about the kid. "Sire, if I may, about Edric Storm, whose name is indeed Edric Storm. It bears repeating." Stannis is nearly out of patience. "Will you shut up about that bloody kid?" And, no, but really, he goes to the same school as your daughter, Shireen, Well, I mean, he's the only schoolmate of Shireen's, considering that the two kids are homeschooled. And they're the only kids on Dragonstone, so they're best friends. And and my son, my son Dale, is it? Devon. But they're best friends, and your daughter would be super sad, if something were to happen to Edric. That's his name. At least go see him, have a chat with him, familiarize, sat him on your lap, ask him how was school, that kind of thing. See how he's trying to, build this bond with this avuncular, shall we call it avuncular bond between, uncle and nephew. But Stannis, it's true, is just poker face. Yeah, I have seen him, time and again. He's the spitting image of my brother Robert, and he can't stop going on about his dad, how awesome his dad was, and how he won all the battles and he was invincible and this and that, which is a great parallel, by the way, with the previous chapter, because Joffrey also was saying pretty much the same thing about Robert, except that Joffrey, we have now learned, isn't exactly Robert's son, but details. Anyway, so except that but Robert, he gives us Stannis just keeps on going. Well, if he only knew that Robert couldn't give a flying saucer about this base-born kid, he enjoyed the process of making babies well enough, especially in other people's beds. But once they were born, they sort of became a nuisance to him. So stop pestering me about this boy, all right? Edric, Your Grace. His name is Edric. Yeah, I know. He's only one boy, though, and my duty is to the realm, all right? Lots of boys, lots of girls. And apparently, all these prophecies Melly sees in the flames point to me. This is Stannis, keeps going about the current situation. It goes, Azor Ahai reborn. Apparently, that's how she calls me. That's what she reckons I am. That's who she reckons I am. Lightbringer, saving the continent from the darkness that's bound to engulf it. Yada yada yada. I didn't ask for any of that, But hey, destiny called. I answered. Ha, or something to that effect. Oh, and also dragons. Yeah, look. If Melisandre's recipe will bring about at least one dragon, what is the life of one annoying kid? Well, Davos begs to differ. What is the life? Everything, Your Grace, everything. Which is basically the last thing Davos is allowed to say, because Stannis dismisses him too. He needs to be left alone, with his own thoughts. So Davos exits the Drum Tower. And this, correct me if I'm wrong, is the first instance, there you go, of a thought bubble in a POV character's mind that's actually in the present tense, as if we're right there at the same time as the POV character is thinking these words. And it's a thought bubble that's more like a general quote as opposed to a description of an action or a bit of dialogue. Here, let me read it to you. Here it goes. Sometimes the storm winds blow so strong, a man has no choice but to furl his sails. And this is Davos, thinking, okay, look, I did what I could. Right now, I'd better make myself scarce, get the hell out of here. I planted the seeds of some kind of conscience. I trapped the conscience of the king, hopefully, but right now there's no more I can say. So he leaves, and with that thought in mind, Davos crosses the yard, thinking how great it would be to sail again, ideally taking his remaining son to his property down in Cape Wrath. It's the salty sea smell brought by the wind, that gives him these ideas. Except that, no, he's not going to do that. Duty first, duty first. And while he's pondering all that, he bumps into Salador, who's still bitter about the plunder he can't get his hands on. Now that Davos has talked Stannis out of that, genocidal plan of attacking Claw Isle, defenseless as it is at the moment, and ripe for plundering from the viewpoint of someone like Salah, or indeed Axel Florent, who hatched the plan to begin with. It all happened in the previous Davos chapter, And Salador is still thinking about all the goodies that could have been his, like fine wines, tapestries, an eagle that Lord Celtigar supposedly trained to hunt, kind of like falconry, but with eagles. And last but not least, a horn that's supposed to summon krakens if you blow it right. Why would you? And we keep coming across mentions of horns that are supposed to summon mythical creatures or perform magical feats, but will we ever see any confirmation that these things work? Or will this particular Chekhov's gun remain unfired? Dear listener, I don't have an answer to that. Anyway, moving on to more practical stuff, since Davos's promotion to Hand of the King has earned him a few enemies in the ranks of the Queen's men. Salador, who somehow always seems to be privy to this sort of information, has overheard that Davos has been trying to make friends among those who, while still loyal to Stannis, are not entirely sold on this Brawlhalla religion / fad, particularly because it's not exactly paying off right now, is it? Look what they are. In fact, George R. Martin here gives us a partial list. There's Sir Gerald, I'm thinking Gerald Gower, who had been heard saying, and I quote, "Yeah, well, for us to get a beating in the Blackwater battle by a dwarf and a dead guy, Tyrion and Renly Baratheon, I mean, what does that say about having a Holler guy at your side?" Okay, it's not an exact quote, but that's what he said, like, oh, we're beaten by Tyrion and Renly. What does that say about, the kind of friends we keep? This Holler guy. Then there's this Sir Andrew Estermont, another Kingsman related to Stannis. His third. I'm not exactly sure how. And then this Rolam Storm, also known as the Bastard of Nightsong, who apparently is a devout worshipper of the warrior. So, needless to say, no, he's not down with this whole Holler thing. And these characters will be fleshed out later, because I think we encounter all of them here for the first time. So yeah, Davos goes, "Yeah, all right, yeah, it's true. I've been networking, but do try and keep this info to yourself, will you? As we both know, the most important thing pirates and smugglers should be able to rely on is a crew that knows how to hold their tongues. Am I right?" Says Davos, tapping the tip of his nose with his index finger. To which Salador gives an interesting reply, because he goes, I'll tell you what, a ship crewed by tongueless men would be even better. Which, I mean, could that be a foreshadowing for something? Like in a future book, perhaps, an unscrupulous captain sailing a ship manned by dudes who can't talk, precisely because they're missing their tongues? Okay, that's all I'm going to say about it, because spoilers, but let it be said that unscrupulous is a bit of a euphemism here. Okay. No, but seriously, this is still Salador talking. Seriously, do you think he will let Melisandre have the boy? Oh, no, man, he wouldn't harm his own blood. Really? Wow, his own brother Renly will be pleased to know that. Oh, wait, no, he won't, because he was killed by a shadow assassin conceived by the very same Melisandre. Wow, this Salador really does have a lot of insider information. I bet most Florents don't know about the shadow babies. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, mate, this is Salah still speaking. I'm off. I'm back to the Blackwater Bay, Better keep an eye on my latest source of revenue. That's right, because you remember that in exchange for his contribution in the Battle of the Blackwater, Salador has been made Lord of the Blackwater Bay by the former Hand to the King, Lord Alistair Florent. And as such, he now has the prerogative to set his fleet to intercept any trade ships crossing Blackwater Bay and taxing them on their goods, which is a great, what do you call it, a carte blanche for a pirate, and this is why, by the way, Salador has just returned from King's Landing with news of the Red Wedding, because he was just there doing that, and now he's going back there in that direction again to keep doing that. And as I said, yes, Davos wishes he could join him, but he can't because duty first. So as the two guys part ways, Davos walks toward the Sea Dragon Tower, which is where the new Maester Pylos has set up shop. And as Davos climbs those steps, he can't help thinking, what am I even doing here as hand to the king? I can't even read or write. Not fluently, anyway. And what do I know about command, politics, intrigues? I belong on the deck of a ship, And Maester Pylos, for all the assurances he tried to give him, when he said that, well, at the end of the day, politics isn't all unlike sailing, Navigating, here we go, navigating treacherous waters, setting sails to catch the rising wind, knowing when a storm is coming and how best to weather it, etc., etc. But Davos remains unconvinced. And you can see why. Dealing with natural elements is one thing. Dealing with people who might be your friends or might be plotting against you is quite another. It's not easy to sniff the right wind that will put Stannis on the throne. And I think that this here, the conversation Davos remembers having with Maester Pylos, because this is all played as a flashback, I think is the very first instance of that adage, some people pronounce it adage, words are wind, which will then become such a recurrent catchphrase that it'll be coming out of our ears. Words are wind, my dear Sir Lord Hand Davos Seaworth, and you have just blown mine into thin air with your logic. You know what? I think you'll be just fine. Fine. His usual famous last words. I think he'll be just fine. I'm sure, but Pylos is as a follow-up to that. Because, you know what? I like to think that the king surely has seen something in you, Like, off the top of my head, speaking truth to power. Literally, And let me tell you something else. Our history books are filled with people who were the best at their jobs until they were promoted to Hand of the King, at which task they proved lousy. Sir Ryam Redwine, best knight that ever lived. Septon Myrmison, I've got the list right here. Greatest Septon ever. Lord Butterwell was smart. Miles Smallwood was brave. Otto Hightower, you might remember this from House of Dragons. Well, the Fire and Blood. Otto Hightower was educated, and they all sucked as hands, Guess where the most successful hand to the king came from? A guy who ensured 40 years of peace under Jaehaerys Targaryen, Humble Septon Barth, plucked from his obscure corner in the Red Keep library. There, I said it. Just read your history, Sir Davos, and you'll see that there are precedents for men like you, who made terrific hands to their kings. Yeah, well, read history. Easy for you to say. I can't even read. That was, again, this is all played as a flashback dialogue. It's a conversation. It's a conversation that took place some time ago. By the way, there's between Davos and Pylos. So it's now replaying in Davos's head right now, and he also remembers how Pylos told him that there's no skill involved in just reading per se. Not really. It's engaging with the text, that you've got to really develop. No, but reading, that's just, it's recognizing marks on the paper. Anyone can do that. Why don't you, Lord Davos, join our daily classes? Up there at the, Sea Dragon Tower. And this is basically how it came to pass that Davos is now regularly attending Pylos' reading lessons, where his son Devon is also studying alongside Edric and Shireen, the only three pupils in this class, all more or less the same level. In the HBO series, where the character Cullen was ruthless, you remember, they stripped down pretty much all of all of this group of characters. For one thing, Edric was merged with Gendry, of all people. You know, two of Robert's illegitimate sons for the price of one, basically, which meant that they had to contrive for Melisandre to leave Dragonstone out of the blue and with no explanations. "I must leave, my lord, your grace," she said, or something like that, so that she could purchase Gendry from the Brotherhood without banners and bring him to Dragonstone for the same purpose, namely barbecue him, because blood of the king. Blood of the king, blood of the king, in the words of Man-O-War, you know. What else? Oh yeah, there was no Patchface, there was no Pylos, or was there? Maybe a Maester shown briefly but never named. I don't remember, actually. I'm pretty sure Devon Seaworth was there, but this whole class of pupils was absent. All absent on the register. Yeah. Absent without leave. So that Davos in the TV series simply learned to read from Shireen, who actually started teaching him when he was still in his dungeon cell. No, I can see what they were doing there, you know, in the HBO series, because they wanted to build this bond between Davos, who, by the way, had just lost his own sons, and Shireen, who had no one to talk to on Dragonstone. But I do prefer the idea of this class of mismatched students, you know, all of different ages and background. It works better here. And Patchface is also attending, well, disrupting the lessons mostly. And if I were Davos, I would grab Patchface by the collar at recess and tell him, "Oh, oi, now you must tell me how you knew about fool's blood, blood on the bride's thigh. How did that go? How did it go? Chains for the guests? Chains on the groom? How did you know about the red wedding? You bastard, talk! And stop throwing spitballs from the back of the class." Imagine sitting through a lesson, literature, history lesson with Pylos, and then Patchface at the back of the class. No, but right now, Patchface is actually waiting outside the classroom. Well, the Maester's room, really. Room lab type thing, because Pylos found him too distracting. So there he is, you know, wearing a helm made of a rack of deer antlers strapped to a tin bucket, like a caricature of a Baratheon. A dozen bells hanging from the tines and ringing whenever he moves. And this time he has no prophecies for Davos, just his usual repertoire and paradoxical things that supposedly happen in the topsy-turvy world of the sea, the underwater world he knows so well, having spent no fewer than 3 days underwater, you know, only to wash ashore, having lost his wits and sense of humor. Just cryptic sentences like this one: "Under the sea, the old fish eat the young fish." You know, his usual repertoire, a la "In Soviet Russia, car drives you." Oh, there's what's his name? Chuck Norris jokes. Anyway, although, of course, it could still be a reference to the Red Wedding, huh? When one thinks about it. Fish, yeah, trout, the Tullys. The young fish, yeah, okay, because river, and the phrase, you know, they set up shop. They build their castle, the twin towers on the river, so could, and they're relatively, yeah, they could still be termed as river fish. They did serve river fish at the Red Wedding, and also they, you know, they're considered, the Freys are still considered upstarts because their family is only a few centuries old. Imagine that. But yeah, okay. If you look at it from the right angle, even that thing could be interpreted as a reference to the Red Wedding. So anyway, the setting is different today. Patchface is outside. The lesson is just over, although the kids are still in the room. And George R. R. Martin here engages in a little bit of genetic traits description, you know. He likes that. The blood is strong. The blood is... was that the word? The blood is strong. The seed is strong. Because Devon looks like a clone of his late brother Dale, and is poised to become identical to him when he grows up. Then you have Edric, who looks every bit as Robert, In fact, only the sons of Robert, only the sons that Robert had out of the wedlock actually resemble him in ways that his quote-unquote legitimate sons do not, for obvious reasons. But anyway, and then Shireen, who inherited, it was sadly for her, she inherited her father's square jaw and her mother's florid pointy ears, which, she would have been better off if those features had been, switched around. Of course, Davos also can't help feeling a certain pride that his own son is rubbing shoulders with royalty, reading and writing and maybe doing calculus, who knows, with royalty, technically, yeah. Of course, he would prefer it if Devon wasn't so fanatical about this Roholler religion, but hey, it's policy around here, so what are you gonna do, right? Yeah. Like his son Devon says, yeah, we were just reading about King Daeron Targaryen, first of his name. He conquered Dorne. I mean, yeah, he did worship false gods, but he was a great, he was a bit of all right otherwise, and very brave in battle. See what I mean? Do you have to bring up these false gods every single time? Leave other religions, worshippers of other religions alone. You could learn a thing or two from Thoros of Myr, young man. Anyway, Edric wastes no time reminding us that, yeah, Daeron was a badass, but you know who was even more awesome? His dad, Robert Baratheon. Oh, surprise, surprise. That's right, he won 3 battles in one day. Busy dude, huh? This is where we hear a bit more, a more precise account of how things went down in the battles that Robert waged against those lords, Grandison, Catherine, and Fell, which we heard mentioned in the previous Davos chapter. And it's a good job that Stannis isn't there to hear Edric going on about those battles, because these lords, Grandison, Catherine, and Fell, are yet another source of bitterness for Stannis, a reminder of how much better Robert was at winning people's hearts and minds and making friends. Here, let me, hang on a second, I want to find you the quote from the previous chapter. Did I? Okay, that was close. Previous chapter, this is Stannis. At Summerhall, he won 3 battles in a single day and brought Lords Grandison and Catherine back to Storm's End as prisoners. What about... Fell was made an orphan by Robert in that battle, so he didn't immediately bring him back. But anyway, so the Lords Grandison and Catherine back to Storm's End as prisoners. He hung their banners in the hall as trophies. Catherine's white fawns were spotted with blood, and Grandison's sleeping lion was torn near in 2. Yet they would sit beneath those banners of a night, drinking and feasting with Robert. He even took them hunting. He put swords and arrows and bows and arrows in their hands. Was that wise? Bah, time would tell. And here Edric pretty much recounts the same story, with Pylos reminding him that it's not cool to boast. Plus, all right, so Robert was good, yeah, but not invincible. Anyway, class dismissed. All pupils, trot out of the Maester's chamber, because it's time for Davos's one-to-one tuitions. So Pylos is all like, oh yeah, but perhaps I could interest you too in a bit of the old Daeron Targaryen's conquest of Dorne. He writes beautifully, but his style is also simple and concise. Yeah, I get it. I bet that this Daeron dude must be the equivalent of Julius Caesar in this universe. See, centuries ago, when I studied ancient Latin at school, as opposed to modern Latin, LOL, lol. No, okay. No, but when I was studying Latin at school, I was constantly told, and then I judged with my own eyes that Julius Caesar was a great place to start for beginners of Latin, because he was no poet or orator or philosopher, It was first and foremost a military leader. So he wrote with none of your ornate and flowery turns of phrase. It was simple and to the point. We go there, we do that thing. Any questions? Yeah? He's famous for that quote where he summarizes an entire battle. I came, I saw, I conquered. I surveyed and I conquered and I won, if you prefer. Veni Vidi Vici, which I'm told is actually pronounced Weni Widi Wiki, because apparently the Romans didn't have the V or the C sound, or the chi or ch. Yes, S, yes, but ch, no. They didn't have those sounds until the barbarians imported them. I don't know, I'll have to ask Megatron about it, YouTuber Megatron. But I digressed. Anyway, so the Conquest of Dorne. Yeah, Davos goes, well, thanks, but no thanks. Look, the Conquest of Dorne might be a great read for my 12-year-old son, but, I'm hand to the king, and, well, I'm not making time from my handing duties to have fun. I'm supposed to learn to read official, dispatches, treaties, reports, that sort of stuff. What have you got over there? Those parchments, new letters, old letters, anything will do. Hand us one of them, will you? Because Davos is thinking, and I quote, "The best way to learn a thing was to do it," he had found. Sales or scrolls, it made no matter. And yes, I could not agree more, dear Davos. I clap my hands and tip my hat to your wisdom. So Pylos hands him a crinkled parchment. Sure enough, a letter they received some time ago. And that reminds Davos of how painfully small is the typeface and font used by maesters across the 7 kingdoms. He goes, but anyway, here goes nothing. So he squints his eyes, and with a few struggles along the way, he realizes that he's reading a distress call, an SOS, from the Night's Watch on the wall, It's actually a copy of the same letter sent by current Castellan at Castle Black, Bowen Marsh, A letter which you will remember was also brought up in Tyrion 4, this same book. At that small council meeting, Pycelle unfurled the parchment and read it aloud. So it would be interesting to compare the reactions here. First of all, the letter was addressed to all 5 kings, to which, at the time, Tywin reacted like, "I beg your pardon," because he was not impressed. 5 kings? No, that won't do at all, I'm afraid. See, he was getting all pissy about that, because there was only 1 king as far as he was concerned. And here too, actually, Davos thinks to himself, oh, this talk of 5 kings would certainly have angered Stannis. Anyway, enough about form. Let's jump to the substance. The king beyond the wall comes south. He leads a vast host of wildlings. Lord Mormont sent a raven from the haunted forest. He is under attack. Other birds have come since, with no words. Yes, the famous recurrent motif. We fear Mormont slain with all his strength. Now, this is the actual text of the letter, but that's spread over nearly a page on the book, between Davos taking his time to decipher the text and various, false starts and corrections from Pylos, which I'm sure is also a narrative technique by George to deliberately stall us readers just when we're most anxious to get to the point, to build up tension, because this is the first time the letter is actually quoted verbatim. Anyway, so Davos does a double take on this letter, because surely Stannis must have seen it. And no. Apparently Davos' predecessor, former King's Hand Alistair Florent, just sat on it. I mean, Pylos doesn't exactly tell us that. He says that when asked whether he wanted Pylos to send a reply, Alistair just said something like, "Oh, nonsense, dear boy, nonsense. The king is already short of men. He has none to waste on wildlings." Which, to be fair, Davos reckons is true enough. And we also learned that Alistair did discuss it with the Queen, being mainly interested in, he was mainly interested in his bottom line, namely making peace with the crown, in the hope that as a pardon, his family would have the Brightwater Keep properties restored to them. He must have figured that aid to the Night's Watch being a distraction from those goals, well, then the king needed not be bothered with the letter from Bowen Marsh. Okay, so it's official. Alistair was a lousy hand. Yeah, that's right. Pylos, you might as well add Alistair to the list of king's hands who sucked. And by the way, quick aside, I find it funny that this chain of communication ending on Alistair Florence's desk, well, and then Pylos, and then Davos via Pylos. But this line of communication actually originated from none other than Alistair Florence's grandson, because Alistair's daughter Melissa is in fact Samuel Tarley's mother. I thought I might point out, remind us of. I guess that when you're highborn, even Westeros is a small world indeed, I guess. And we also know why more ravens came carrying no letters. That's because Sam panicked and never attached any parchments to the raven's claws. I'm talking about the second group of ravens he sent. I know that it's called a murder of ravens. But anyway, my point is that all those letters Samuel scribbled with more details, describing the others, capital O, the Whites, or White Walkers, the living dead. Sam never sent those letters. Shame. It's all there in Samuel 1, is it? The same book. Anyway, while Tywin exploited the situation to the letter to blackmail, basically bully and blackmail the Watch into electing Janos Slynt as Lord Commander, and Davos is still puzzled here. So he goes, are you sure King Stannis has never seen this letter? Really? Yeah. So he stops there and ponders a bit, because he has experience of the wildlings. He reminisces of a time when he was serving aboard of a smuggler's ship called the Cobble Cat under Roro Uhoris, a Taroshi known up and down the narrow sea as the Blind Bastard, though he was neither blind nor baseborn. I'm quoting from the actual text here. Roro had sailed past Skagos in the shivering sea, visiting 100 little coves that had never seen a trading ship before. He brought steel, swords, axes, helms, good chainmail hauberks to trade for furs, ivory, amber, and obsidian with the free folk. When the Cobble Cat turned back south, her holds were stuffed, but in the Bay of Seals, 3 black galleys came out to herd her into Eastwatch. Yeah, galleys from the Night's Watch. They lost their cargo, and the bastard lost his head for the crime of trading weapons to the wildlings. Oh, good to know that Davos is familiar with the Skagos island area. I wonder if that will come in handy in a later book. Anyway, but then all sorts of confusing thoughts come to his head. Stannis can't even, wrap around. Davos can't even wrap his head around all these different thoughts that kind of like make him dizzy. First of all, King Stannis can't even help his own cause, let alone go out there to rescue the Night's Watch. But then again, what were those words Melisandre spoke? One whose name may not be spoken is marshalling his power. Soon comes the cold and the night that never ends. Yeah, but she was talking about supernatural powers or something like that, not wildlings. Oh yeah, but Stannis did have a vision in the flames, a ring of torches in the snow with terror all around, which again is a reference to Samuel 1, where what was left of the Night's Watch after the massacre at the Feast of the First Men was desperately running back south, with the Whites at their heels, trying to reach, Craster's Keep. But then again, if Stannis is supposed to be Azor Ahai Reborn, who tempered the sword Lightbringer by thrusting it through the heart of the wife he loved. Lovely pretty story, huh? Anyway, does that mean that more human sacrifices are expected? Like Edric Storm? You see, Davos's mind is all over the place right now, you know? The man is in total confusion. Plus, he's thinking, and I find this interesting, listen to what he's thinking now. What harm if some wildlings... what harm if some wildling king conquers the north? It was not as though Stannis held the north. His grace could scarcely be expected to defend people who refused to acknowledge him as a king. Why do I find that interesting? I find it interesting because Davos's reasoning right now is not exactly light years away from what Tywin said back in Tyrion 3, you know? A comment Tywin made in that chapter for which he was chastised by countless commentators, podcasters, and so on. Basically, the context was this. The North being in open rebellion against the crown, with Robb calling himself king in the North, etc., etc. Varys, at some point, asked Tywin whether he intended to send some men to the Night's Watch, addressing a different item on the agenda, to which Tywin replied, so what if the wildlings attack the wall and invade the North? I mean, the North no longer wishes to be subject to the Iron Throne, it would seem, so by what right do they look to the Iron Throne for aid? King Robb and King Balon both claim the North. Let them defend it, if they can. And if not, this Mance Rayder might even be a nice, prove a useful ally. So that's what Tywin said. But a lot of commentators, myself included, at the time, flipped the argument around, going, Tywin. And so did my cat. Tywin. No. If, as you claim, you and the king are... Yeah, I know, I'm getting to it, all right? And my cat is impatient. If you, as you claim, you and the king are indeed protectors of the realm, then shouldn't you protect the realm? Isn't that on page 1 of the handbook titled, So You, the New King's Hand? Yeah, there is such a manual, I bet. Because, look, if, on the other hand, you exclude the North from your protection, well, aren't you kind of conceding that the North is not part of the realm? Huh? Ha-ha! Got you there. So yeah, that was the refutation to Tywin's argument. But now Davos is pretty much putting forth the very same argument. So what's that about? I don't hear any commentators criticizing Davos for that. Anyway, Davos, is confused. Shall we chalk it all up to confusion? Because Davos is a pretty confused man right now, truth be told. He's like, I need to sit down. What to do. And what he does, we will only find out in the next Davos chapter, because with Lord Davos Seaworth, a.k.a. the Onion Knight, in total confusion, this chapter ends. Oh, and what a chapter it was. Lovely. So anyway, that's all from me. And it was a pleasure talking to you. If you made it this far, wow, congratulations on your attention span, and thank you for listening. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to do all of those things that people do under such circumstances. And I look forward to talking to you again in the next chapter, which happens to be a Jon chapter, unless of course you want to skip right ahead and listen to the same Davos chapter, or indeed anywhere at all, or nowhere at all. Feel free. All right. All the best. Speak to you soon. Bye.